Crystal, and this is my friend Whitney.
Good morning. Hi, Crystal. Hi, all of you guys.
So great to have you here, Whitney. Steven's not here, but he will be here later in the comments. He was just working on his engine earlier this morning.
Yeah, I do miss Steven being here, but it gives me an opportunity to get out of the house, like the first time this week.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
We are so happy to connect with you guys. Be sure if you're on Facebook to share. I'm going to go right now on my phone and share with my friends and my family on Facebook. Be sure to like, be sure to comment. We want to know you're there. Send emojis, send a hello. And if you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell button so you have notifications for any other gatherings in the future. Well, Whitney, how was your week?
You know, I had a good week. I have 3 kids, and I'm trying to homeschool all 3 of my kids, which is fun and very, very hard. So my one challenge this week is I had all 3 kids. They all had a Zoom call all at the same time. So trying to figure out how do we have enough devices, how do we get them all on. So it was good. How about you? How was your week?
It was good. I have 2 cats, so I can kind of relate. Not really, but we're good. I've just been bugging Steven. We've been working at home. We're able to FaceTime with some friends. Well, actually something called house party, so we're able to do some trivia and bug the cats as well. So it was fun.
Cool.
Yeah. So how was your week? You guys let us know in the comments. We'd love to know. Mm-hmm. We want to hear from you guys, and we'll read those later. Awesome. Well, so right now we're in this series called When God. We're talking about 3 guys that Jesus clearly loved, but their circumstances seem to tell a different story.
Yeah, I think that was something that was super encouraging to me last week about Greg's message was despite or in spite, whatever our present, current circumstances are, it doesn't necessarily reflect how God feels about us. So wherever we are, it's not saying that's, how God feels about us.
No, yeah, that was super encouraging to hear. Definitely. What was encouraging to you? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys.
For sure. And before we go, we want to remind you of a couple things.
First is neighborhood teams. I know many of you guys are already participating in neighborhood teams and we're doing those via Zoom calls. But it's a perfect opportunity if you've always wanted to or kind of been reluctant to. It's great. You just Zoom in, and then you get to have a conversation about, Sunday mornings. Just send us an email at hellomiamichurch.com.
Yep,
correct?
Yep, that's it.
And we'll be in contact with you guys.
Definitely. And also through via Zoom, we're doing prayer at noon on Wednesdays. I was able to join in this Wednesday, and it was just great to hear about your difficulties and be able to pray with you and pray for you and just talk and encourage each other. So at the end of the message, Greg will also lead us into communion. So be sure to prepare your bread and crackers. Oh, same thing. Bread, juice. Any bread or juice will do.
Or crackers, or whatever you have will do. All right, you guys ready? I'm ready. Let's welcome Greg.
All right, well, thanks, Whitney and Crystal, and good morning to you. And it is great to be connected with you. And many of you are connected on different platforms. Some of you, you're watching right now on Facebook. Some of you are on YouTube. And some of you are listening later in the week on our Miami Church podcast. So I just want to say a good morning, and it's so good to be with you this morning. And we're in a conversation that we're calling When God. And the idea of this is that we're looking at people that Jesus clearly loved. It's evident that he loved them, but if you were to look at their circumstances seem to tell a different story. And last week in part 1, we looked at a story of a guy that Jesus said, this is the greatest man who was ever born of a woman. And so here was the greatest man who was ever born of a woman, and he's in trouble. He's in really bad trouble. His life is hanging in the balance, and Jesus didn't show up. Jesus didn't do anything. And we know that Jesus loved him. We know that Jesus cared for him, but Jesus didn't show up in that moment to help him. And I think this brings up some really important and hard questions. I mean, is God's silence, is it a sign of his absence, or does it mean something else? And here was kind of our thought last week, and it still resonates this week, is faith often deteriorates as our circumstances deteriorate. As your circumstances, as my circumstances, as they deteriorate, our faith is affected. In fact, I'd be curious right now in the comments, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, like, where is your faith struggling right now? What is your faith doing? Is it high? Is it low? Where's it struggling? I mean, I think it's normal, right? It's okay. These questions are important. And it's normal for us to have these questions. But the challenge, I feel like the challenge last week and this week, is we need to go deeper. We got to keep asking. Silent questions rarely find answers. Now, if you missed last week, you can check it out. Facebook, YouTube, podcast. But today, in part 2 of our message series, When God, I want to start by telling you a story. This was actually several years ago. Several years ago, there was one morning. It's almost silly to even tell the story. Several years ago, there was one morning, and I'll never forget, I came out the front door of my house, and my car was parked in the driveway, and I was getting ready to go to work. I had my bag. I was ready to go. I was kind of in a hurry because I had a meeting. And I remember getting in my car, and I had one of those, one of those, the car will not start. And I remember just oh. And so I don't know why, but in that moment, I got out of the car. I kind of took a deep breath, and it's like I walked up to the front of the car. I don't know what I was doing. And I just kind of put my hand on the car, and it was just, God, please help me. I've got to go to a meeting. Can you please help me? And I go and I get back in the car, and boom, the car started. I left, went, and was at my meeting. Now, the next day, not even 24 hours later, we get a call from a friend, a neighbor, someone we care about deeply, and they had just had a baby boy, and it was their second kid, and they just had this baby boy, and they didn't know. It was within the first week of his birth, and it was a lot of just uncertainty, something's not right. I just remember saying, we don't know, the running test, we can't figure it out, but something's not right. Will you come and pray? And so my wife and I, we go over to their house, and there's people there, and there's some really prayer warriors, and people were praying, and the room's kind of full of people. And so we walk in, and they're just, will you just pray? And I'll never forget, the mom is holding this tiny, just a few day old little boy. And on the surface, everything looked fine. And so I didn't know what to do other than just pray. And so I put my hand on that little newborn baby, and I just pleaded with God. I said, God, please. God, would you please heal this baby? God, whatever's wrong with this baby physically, I don't know what it is. Would you just heal him? Would you restore him? Would you make him healthy? Would you make him whole? And I just pleaded with everything within me and just cried out to God. I remember when I said amen and I finished the prayer, it was like I was looking around. I almost didn't know what to do. It was like, well, is there a sign? Did it work? I don't really know. The baby looks the same. It's not like the car started. How do I even know? Well, come to find out, a day or two later, they actually found out that the baby has cystic fibrosis. And so this little baby boy, who is just grown to be an awesome kid, has challenges, daily challenges, and his life expectancy is so short. Now, the question that I have, that you potentially have as well, is why would God do something so insignificant and not something important? See, who cares if my car starts? It's a meeting. Who really cares? It's insignificant. Why would he do something so insignificant and not something important when we're talking about a precious baby to an amazing family? And when it comes to God, when it comes to following God, to seeking God, I believe that we all have a universal frustration. And this is true of all of you, wherever you are on your faith journey, whether you're at the beginning just trying to figure this whole thing out, or you've been walking with God for years and decades. I think we all share a universal frustration, and you feel it. Right? You just get laid off from your job. You're furloughed. Right? You're still sick. You've prayed for healing. You're sick. The migraines continue. Right? You're in pain. Your husband's not changing. You're single and there's no one on the horizon. Your career is stuck, or maybe you just feel stuck, or maybe you really are stuck at home. And this is just not how it's supposed to be. And God feels absent or silent or distant or just uncooperative. It's like, hey, God. Hello, God. Where are you? Do you see what's happening here? Do you see this? Are you on vacation? Do you hear my prayers? Do you hear the words coming out of my mouth? Do you see this little precious baby boy, God? Where are you? And I just want to go, God, I'm trying over here. I mean, I'm trying to do the right things. I feel like I'm a good person here. God, why are you not cooperating? Is there somewhere in your life right now, maybe put this in the comments, but is there a place in your life right now you just go, God's just not cooperating? I mean, you're praying, you're pleading, you're hoping, and God's just not cooperating with you. Yeah. I mean, and then guys like me don't make any better, right? There's preachers, right? These preacher types, and they're all over the internet right now, right? And there's all these guys, and they're just shouting and spewing. It's like, man, if you just have more faith, if you just pray more, if you just read your Bible, I mean, what's wrong with you, right? And then you watch these guys, and you feel all this shame, like, well, maybe I just don't have enough faith, or maybe I just don't believe, or maybe I got some kind of sin or something, right? And then there's people, and there's all these people. And you just look at their life, and you kind of look at their life from a distance, and it just seems to all fall into place. And we're in the middle of a global pandemic. We're all in lockdown, and you're like looking at their Instagram, and they're all smiling. The kids are smiling. Everybody's behaving. And you're going like, man, their clothes are nice and all pressed, and their hair's all done. And you're like, I've been in my pajamas for 3 days. How in the world do you look like that? And everything just looks like it falls right into place, and you're thinking, I don't even know if they pray. But everything seems to just fall into place. But for you, God seems to be absent. He's distant. Where are you? Hello? And God just seems to be uncooperative. And doubt starts creeping in. Frustration starts mounting. And what I want to do for just a few minutes today is I want to look at a story. And this is the story of someone that God clearly loved. In fact, this guy's an all-star. I mean, he's at the top. And God clearly loved him. But if you look at his life and his circumstances, it seems to tell a different story. And what I love about this story and why this story is so comforting to me is because this guy is going to make a request. And this request is clearly from someone that God should say yes to. And God says no. He says no. And the request would have actually helped this guy do what God called him to do. And the guy I want to look at today is a guy named Paul. If you're familiar at all with the Bible, the story of the first church in the first century, you're familiar with a guy named the Apostle Paul. He's a big-time character just in history. And Paul, he didn't start out as Paul. He started out as Saul. He was a guy who was persecuting the church. He was trying to kill and to imprison Christians, followers of the way, as it was called at first century. And he has this encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus. He's on this road. He has this encounter. And this encounter happens probably 3 or 4 years after the resurrection of Jesus. So it's very soon. There's still a lot of eyewitnesses running around. And Paul, from that point when he has that encounter with Jesus, 3 or 4 years after the resurrection, for 20 years, for the next 20 years of his life, he gives every single thing he has to help people find and follow Jesus. He helps start churches. He helps train leaders. He writes letters to churches. He does everything in his power to help as many people know the good news of Jesus Christ. But after he became a follower of Christ, for Paul, something devastating happened. And he was afflicted with a physical ailment. And this was a big deal. He would say it was an impediment because it kept him or it hindered him from doing what he was called to do, what he was supposed to do, what God had called him to do. And so what do you think Paul did? I mean, what would you do? Right? If you had something, a physical something, a mental something that was keeping you from doing what you believe God is calling you to do. Well, he did what I would do, is Paul asked God to remove it. He pleaded. I mean, he put more than I probably did when I was trying to pray over that little baby boy, right? He pleaded, he cried out to God. He said, God, please remove this. And God said, no. And God said, no. And God said, hey, I don't care how much faith you have. I don't care how long you pray. I don't care how obedient you are. I don't care how long you fast. I don't care what you promise. I don't care what you bargain. The answer, Paul, is no. And Paul begged God, God, please change it. What's interesting is Paul recounts his version of this in a letter that he wrote to the church at Corinth. It's in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. Here's what he says. You'll see it here on the screen behind me. 2 Corinthians 12, beginning verse 7, he says this. He says, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh. You heard this expression? A thorn in my flesh? Well, this is where it comes from. Paul says he had a thorn, which is this idea of a constant, irritating problem. Look how he describes it. He says, a messenger of Satan to torment me. Those are some strong words. You ever been on a vacation or a trip and things just didn't go well? And there's an expression in English, it's something like this, like that was the trip from hell, or that was the vacation from hell. Well, it's this kind of idea here. And so Paul is saying, hey, hey, I have this thorn, and whatever this thorn is, we don't know exactly what it is, he's saying it's so bad that it torments me. This word here, it's this idea that every single day, when I wake up, it's there. When I try to get out of bed, it's there. As I walk along the way, it's there. When I try to stand, it's there. When I try to rest, it's there. It's tormenting him. And again, we don't know exactly what this physical ailment is. There's some clues maybe to this. Some believe it was epilepsy and that he would have these seizures occasionally. Some believe it was some form of like a migraine, like these debilitating headaches. And I know many of you, if you suffer with migraines, you get this, right? You know how it can just debilitate you and hinder you. Some believe it was malaria, that he would have these frequent bouts with malaria. Others believe it was eye problems. That we know that Paul had issues with his eyes, and this is obviously in the days in the first century before glasses and contacts. And so he could have been something with his eyes where he just couldn't see. We don't know exactly what it is, but we know that it was some kind of physical ailment, and it was constant. And he uses the word torment. It tormented. Everywhere I go, every time I try to serve God, every time I try to do good things, every time I try to do the right thing, this torments me. It hinders me. Now, if you're suffering right now, physically or mentally, you get this, right? You get it. I know so many people in our community, right? You have arthritis, or you have headaches, migraines. Maybe you deal with depression, or sleep issues, or addictions, right? And these things, right? These physical, these mental things, what do? They hinder you. They hinder you. And so Paul is saying, this torments me. Look what he says in the next verse. He says, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. Now, this isn't like a casual, like, oh, hey, God, how you doing? Do you mind? Hey, God, if it doesn't bother you, can you, help me out? No. He says, I pleaded. These are seasons of intense. These are significant seasons of prayer where Paul went to pouring out his heart. God, heal me. Please, God. Restore me. Take this away from me. He's pouring himself out from his gut, from his soul. He's desperate. He's pleading. Think about the bargaining power of Paul. Right? I know you, right? You try to bargain with God. Right? And you say something like this. You ever said this? Like, if God, if you will, then I will. Like, God, if you'll do this, and I'll watch the online gathering every week. I'll even watch it twice. God, if you will, I'll start giving, God, and I'll serve, God, and I'll never pick up another drink, God, or hey, I'll quit smoking, God, but hey, God, if you will, I'll never, right? You ever bargained with God? What does a bargain with God look like? Think about Paul. If anyone could bargain with God, this guy was laying everything he had on the line to serve God. And he says 3 times. 3 times I pleaded with God. I begged. I poured everything out. If we stop just right here, this would be encouraging. It's encouraging to me. And this should be encouraging to you. Because it's nice to know that someone that God loved, God knew his name. God called him to work on his behalf. God called him to do incredible things. In fact, God used him to do significant things. In fact, his impact is felt thousands of years later. And here's a guy that a yes would just make sense. If I'm God, I think God that I'm not. But if I were God, I'd be like, yes, Paul, whatever you need, buddy, let me help you out. But God says no. Paul records this. He says, God said to him, my grace is sufficient for you. You can just see, I just see the scene, right? Here's Paul, and he's pouring out his guts. He's just pouring out his heart. He's pouring out his soul. And he's got, heal me. God, change me, fix me, relieve the pain. Take this away from me. Please, take this away from me. And the answer is no. And then God says, my grace is sufficient for you. My grace is enough. That's all you need. I'm not going to give you what you're asking for, but I'm going to give you grace. Now, this is an interesting word. It's a word that gets confused a lot. But what's interesting, this word, grace, again, this was originally written in Greek. It's used 155 times in the New Testament. And a lot of us, when we think of the idea of grace, we think of this idea of salvation or this idea of meeting God for the first time, right? And it's this undeserved favor. And I know, hey, I've been kind of living my own life and doing my own things, and I made a lot of mistakes and hurt a lot of people. And somehow in the midst of all that, God still loves me. And I turn to him, and I give my life to God, and he gives me grace. And I'm able to have a real, authentic, genuine relationship with God, right? So that is grace. But there's more to it than that. The word that Paul is using here, he's really talking about another aspect of grace. And it's this idea of daily grace. It's this idea of Paul's already in a relationship with God. Paul's already given his life to follow Jesus, to make Jesus the leader of his life. And so he's walking his life as best as he can, in step, in sync with God. And God's saying, hey, Paul, I'm going to give you a daily grace. Daily grace is this ability to put one foot in front of the other. It's this ability to get through another day. This is grace that just says, hey, go to work and endure one more day. Come home to the unknown in the afternoon and endure. Just keep going. Despite all that's around you, just keep going. Where do you need grace today? Maybe you should pause right here and put in the comments or send us a direct message or maybe even email us at hello@miamichurch.com. We have people right now on all our platforms who are looking at comments, who are monitoring our email, and they are ready. Our prayer team is ready. We got people on our prayer team literally all over the city right now, and they are here at this moment to pray for you. And so I say, where do you need grace? This kind of grace. This kind of grace that he's saying, hey, my grace is sufficient for you. There's daily grace. It may be hard, but man, there's grace just to take another step. Grace to keep going. Grace to not give up. Where do you need God to show up in your life today? Let us know. And here's the idea. Paul is saying this is grace. This is God leaning in. This is God reaching toward you because he wants to bless you and to be near to you. The closest thing I got to this, and this falls short on so many levels, my youngest son who's 4, the other day, he hurt his leg, he's falling and he's crying, and I, as a dad, I just kind of swooped him up in my arms, and we went and sat on the sofa, and he's, oh, owie, owie, owie. There's this thing where he goes, owie, 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 and he just says it a million times over and over. And I just swooped him in my arms, and all I could do, right, is holding tight, and I just whispered in his ear, I love you, you're okay, I love you, I love you. And I just imagine God, right, in these moments where there's so much pain, right? And we feel like pain and just holding us in his arms and just whispering in our ear, I love you. And so God says to Paul, who he clearly loved, who he called, who he believed in, he said, Paul, no, I'm not going to remove your thorn. I'm not going to remove your thorn in the flesh. I'm not going to remove this physical problem that torments you. But I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you strength to keep going forward. I'm going to give you strength to take another step. He says, my grace is sufficient for you. And then look what he says next. He says, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Power made perfect in weakness. Now this word perfect here, just so you know, the kind of the literal English translation would be something like mature or come to full fruition or fully on display. He says, my power becomes on display or it becomes mature in your weakness. Would you sign up for that? No, none of us would sign up for that. I wouldn't. I want to be the guy up on the stage, right? I want to be the guy that's out on the front row and they say, and now the winner of the award is Greg Ingram. I can come up like, oh, thank you. I just thank you so much. Thank you. I want to thank my family and the director, right? I want to be the guy, right? I want to be the executive of the year, the salesman of the year, the employee of the year, right? I want to be the guy that my talents, my gifts, my opportunities, that I leverage those for God, right? Not my weaknesses. But here's the good news. The good news is we don't get to choose. Because none of us would choose this. None of us would choose using our weaknesses, right, to put on display the goodness, the glory, the goodness of God. No. But if I think about this on a deeper level, and I slow down enough, it makes sense, right? Because we live in this celebrity culture, and look at all these celebrities, and wow, that's cool, and look how slick that is, and everybody's got their page and all this stuff that look good. But I get that, right? But at the end of the day, if I really boil it down, who's the person that I want to follow? Like, who do I want to get in the trenches with? Who do I want to follow, to lead me or help guide me? Who am I looking for? I'm looking for people that have been to the bottom. I'm looking for people who have suffered. Why? Because they have displayed endurance. They've displayed humility. They've been forged by the fire. There's character that's built in hard times. And so there's something that happens. And so he says, God says to Paul, he says, hey man, Paul, listen up, bro. I'm not going to remove the weakness. I'm not going to remove the thorn, but I'm going to give you the power to keep going in spite of the weaknesses. I'm going to give you enduring grace, the power to endure. Endurance. I mean, think about this, a little side note. What makes a good marriage, or what makes a great parent, or what makes a great church, or what makes a great leader, right? It's this. I mean, you want to be a good husband, you want to be a good wife, you want to be a good parent. We want to be a great church, Miami Church. Well, what do? You show up day in, day out, week in, week out, through the good, through the bad. You're consistent. Your character is the same. You're dependable. And God is saying, hey, my strength comes into its own in your weakness. And then Paul writes this. He says, therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ, that's just the word for the Messiah, so that Jesus, the Messiah's power, may rest on me. Paul says this. Look what he's saying here. He says, you know, guys, after sitting in this for years, after wrestling with this, after praying, after pouring my heart out, after really just wrestling this to the ground, I think God really gets to show off, not in my strengths, but in my weaknesses. Like, it really helps me actually do what God's calling me to do. He shows off in my strengths, not in my weakness. I mean, look at the maturity here. The perspective that he has here, this is not easy. Then he says this is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardship, in persecutions, and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Who would say that? I mean, what would it take for you to get to a place where you could say something like that? Like, I delight in all of these things because I realize that when I'm weak, that's really when I become strong. You know, a lot could be said here. But I just want to give like some observations. As I've been wrestling with this for the last few weeks, here's just some observations that I have, and I'll put these on the screen quickly behind me. The first one's this, is sometimes a no is the best thing that can happen to you. Sometimes a no is the best thing that can happen to you. Now this, obviously, you're not going to feel this or see this in the immediate. I mean, this you won't feel this in the moment. In fact, it may actually take even years, and there's probably some things we won't ever know for sure. But sometimes a no is the best thing that ever happened to you. Here's another thing, that observation. We have permission to ask God to remove our thorns. You should. If you have a physical ailment, if you have a mental or some other kind of challenge in your life, you should pour out your heart. You should follow the model of Paul. You should, from your gut, from your soul, you should pour it out. You should ask God to remove it. You should plead with God. We did the right thing. When that little baby was there, I believe I would do it again exactly the same way. I would plead with God to heal that little baby boy. You should. Here's another observation, is God has permission to say no. God has permission to say no. And neither our standing with Him nor our faith requires a yes. In fact, I would say it this way, it takes more faith to endure a no from God than it does to acquire a yes. It takes more faith to endure a no from God than it does a yes. See, there's a difference between a moment of faith and a life of faith. You see the difference? A moment of faith, like, oh, wow, God, you came through in this moment. What does it take to have a life of faith? Here's another observation. This one's kind of hard. God may choose to showcase His power on the stage of your weakness. God may choose. Why some, why I don't know. God may choose to showcase His power on the stage of your weakness. And so it may not get better. It may not change. Your job situation, your physical pain, your relationship, it may not change. I was reflecting of a friend who for years has had an immune system deficiency. And this has been decades now. And why, all the phases that we would go through. God, why? Would you please heal me? Please take this away. This is difficult. I mean, we're talking like medicine and doctors and, all kinds of stuff. Prayed for healing. And why? I don't know. And will God ever heal him? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But maybe God's saying, hey, I'm going to get a great deal of attention. I'm going to get a great deal of glory by demonstrating my strength in your weakness. How does that concept, how does this idea, how does it affect your faith? How does the idea that God may choose to showcase His power on the stage of your weakness, how does that affect your faith? Last observation I'll make is you can't experience God's sustaining grace while resisting His plan. See, this is the rub, all right? This is where the rub happens, right? If you resist His plan, if you resist His will, then you resist His grace. If you have been unwilling to accept no for an answer, you are struggling to deal with your situation in your own strength. Right? Here's the rub. right? And this comes all into the way that we pray. This comes in the way that we talk about, like, think about this, like genuine prayer. Genuine prayer isn't about getting our way. It's about surrendering our plan. Let me say that again. Genuine prayer isn't about getting our way. It's about surrendering our plan. Maybe another way to say this is genuine prayer reminds us that we are not in control, and it keeps us close to the one who is. And genuine prayer isn't just asking, but it's trusting. So you can't experience God's sustaining grace while resisting His plan. At some point, you have to come to this place. You come to this place where you go, man, I don't know. Like, why? Like, God, why would you start the car? Who cares about the car? It's not even an important meeting. Why wouldn't you heal the baby? And the reality is, I don't know. And I may never know. Why? You have to come to a place where you can surrender, where you can give it like, I don't understand it all, God, but I'm just going to trust you. And I'm going to trust that no matter what happens today, no matter what happens tomorrow, no matter what happens next week, God, I'm just going to trust that you're going to give me the grace to endure. And this is where Paul came in his life. He said, man, I struggled, I wrestled, I questioned just like we all should. But I finally came to the place after years of struggle, after pleading, after praying, I came to the place where I realized that God wanted to demonstrate, He wanted to show His power, He wanted to demonstrate who He is through my weaknesses. Can I just say a word of prayer over you as you're listening, watching right now? God, I don't fully understand. I don't know. I can't explain. God, but the older I get, the more I wrestle, the more I interact with people, the more I see you at work. God, I'm learning more and more to trust you, to trust your plan. That doesn't say, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it makes sense. I'm not saying, God, I'm just learning that you know. And so, God, there are men, there are women, there are students who are dialed in right now, who are listening to my voice, God, and they just need a fresh touch of that grace right now. And so, God, would you, however you need to do that, would you just send grace? Just give them that grace to endure, to take another step. Yeah, God, I believe you. God, if there's those that are listening, watching, God, maybe they're struggling just to trust you, God. I pray that whatever you got to do, make yourself known, God. Draw them to yourself. Break down barriers. Man, God, I love you so much. And God, I thank you. I thank you, God, that even though when life doesn't make sense, even though when things are hard, God, you are just moving toward us. You're leaning in. And I just have that picture of me holding my 4-year-old. God, you're just wrapping us in your arms and just whispering in our ear, I love you, I love you, I love you. So, God, may we know that today. And I thank you, God, and I pray that in the name of Jesus. Amen. We're going to shift into a time of communion. And Jesus, when he was with his followers, with his disciples, he kind of gave final instructions. He led them in this experience of communion, and he said, hey guys, as often as you get together, do this to remember me. And so as a church, as Miami Church, whether we're physically in this room or whether we're online, we just try to follow the simple teachings of Jesus. And Jesus was a genius because he knew that life would be hard, that life would be busy, that we would get distracted. And so he created this experience where on a regular basis, it would remind us, it would kind of refocus us or recenter us on the truth of who he is. And so the basic thing that he taught his disciples, he's like, hey guys, I'm getting ready to give my life for you. I'm going to go and they're going to put me up on a cross and they're going to nail me into this wood. And when I'm on that cross, I'm going to take all your junk and your shame and your guilt and your sin on me. I'm going to be your sacrifice, the final sacrifice for you. And then they're going to put me in a tomb, and then I'm going to come back to life. And we're going to start the church, and we're going to tell everybody the good news. But he created this practice that we call communion. And on that night, he took some bread, cracker, whatever you have works, and he broke it, right? And he said, this is my body which is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. And then he took some juice, some wine, and he said, this is my blood which is spilled out for you. Again, do this in remembrance of me. And so what we simply do here is we take the bread and we dip it in the juice, and we slow down. It's a chance to recalibrate, to pray, to talk to God. And so I'm going to invite you into this moment. I'm going to give you just a moment here to celebrate communion with us. Yeah, I'm so glad you were with us today. We'll be back next week for part 3 of When God, and we'll continue looking at another person that God clearly loved. But if you looked at its circumstances, it certainly doesn't seem to be the case. The other thing I'm really excited about is beginning this week at the 1st of May. Can you believe it's May already? Is we're going to begin as a church. We're going to encourage every single person, wherever you are on your faith journey. We're going to encourage you to read through the New Testament with us in 90 days. So we're going to take the month of May, June, and July, and we're going to read through the New Testament together. And there'll be readings every day. And we'll be doing this, and it starts on May the 1st, which is next week. And so we'll have these cards that we're going to mail out to some of you guys. It'll also be available on our website at miamichurch.com. There'll be a reading plan there. You'll see it all on our social media. We'll be talking about it a lot. But we're going to take some time just to read through it. And the idea, the goal, right? It all just goes back to the mission of our church, helping people find and follow Jesus. The goal is wherever you are on your faith journey, that by reading through this together, again, we're doing this together, by reading through this together, the goal is for you just to know Jesus. I want you to know Jesus. And so I want you to, if you don't know him, I want you to know him. If you do know Jesus, I just want you to know him better. And so we're going to be doing this together over the summer. It's going to be very, very exciting. Next thing I want to talk about is just really just a thank you of so many in this crazy season, in this uncertain time. So many of you have just continued to generously give to the mission of our church. And I just want to say thank you. It really is important. In fact, again, I say this every week. If you are struggling, if you're in need, we want to know about it. If you would just email us at hello@miamichurch.com. We want to come alongside you however we can to support you and encourage you. And so you can do that. Also, if you are financially stable, I just encourage you to continue giving to the mission of our church. One of the things we've done is we've created this COVID-19 fund where 100% of everything that's given is going out to bless our neighbors. And we're trying to help as many people as we can right here in our community, right around us, whether they're a first responder or whether there's someone who's just in need of food or just in need of some help. We're trying to help as many people as we can. And so thanks to your generosity, we are able to do that. So just want to say thank you for that. Also, I just want to encourage you on whatever platform you're on. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and like us. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell so you'll get all those notifications. We're going to try to put this out on as many platforms as we can because we want as many people as possible to be able to connect with us. And so go ahead right now in comments. In fact, I'm going to get grab my phone right now, and I love the comments. So anything that you put on there, where our team is here, we're going to be looking into. I just want to encourage you again, if there's any way we can pray for you, throw that in the comments right now. We would love to see that. I'm trying to get logged on here. We would love to see that. Put that in the comments. Our prayer team is standing by. They are looking at these. They're praying for you. If you want to do it more personal, you can hit it to do a direct message, or you can say hello@miamichurch.com. And so just want to encourage you, continue making comments here. I'm going to give it a minute. Yeah. So keep making the comments. I'll give it a minute, because once we hit stop on this, you won't be able to do comments as well. Man, I just want you to know we're here for you. We love you. And we may not be able to physically be in the same space. We may not be able to look eye to eye. We may not be able to hug, embrace physically. But man, it's not changed my heart. It's not changed the mission of our city. The world may have changed, but our mission has not. And we are more committed than ever to helping people find and follow Jesus, more committed to this city, we're more committed to the great people of this community. And so I just want you to know I love you. And so can I just say a closing word of prayer, and then we'll wrap up our time this morning. God, I thank you. I thank you for the opportunity that we have to serve you. God, there's amazing men and women, the people of our church. Guys, I've talked to people throughout the week. I'm just amazed at the resilience, at the hope. God, I love to see us helping each other out. God, I love how we're rallying around each other. God, there's so many amazing things happening. God, and it's your people, your church. God, I thank you for those who are watching right now who are maybe just checking this whole thing out. And they're just uncertain about you. God, I believe that a true, authentic relationship with you will just change everything. God, that Jesus, you make everything better. You make life better. You make us better at life, God. And so I just pray that you would draw them to yourself. God, I thank you for everyone that's on right now, the comments, people that are sending prayer requests, God. You know all of those. God, just show yourself, make yourself known. God, thank you for the example of the Apostle Paul, who it was hard. It wasn't easy for him, but yet you still used him to do unbelievable things that have impacted generations and generations and generations of people. And so, God, I thank you for his impact on me and on our church. So, God, I love you. Thank you for technology and the opportunity today that we could literally be here, and yet thousands of people all over Miami and really the world, God, can have a connection with us here. So I love you, and I pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. God bless you, and we're here for you, anything you need this week. And we'll be back right here next Sunday at 11:15. God bless you.